At 6:05 p.m., this meeting of the Mountain View Wisman School Board is now called to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now take a roll call of the trustees.
Laura Blakely,
Laura Berman,
Ellen Wheeler,
Chris Chan.
Devin Conley. Let the record reflect that all 5 trustees are present. We will now move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any comments or questions from trustees regarding the agenda? Seeing as there are none, we will take public comment on the agenda. If you would like to comment on the agenda, you may raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. I see that we have 1 speaker, so we will put up a timer for 3 minutes. All right, Mr. Nelson, you may unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone, and you have 3 minutes to address the board.
Thank you for unmuting me. Yes, I wanted to make a comment. I don't know whether the rest of the trustees got it. On item 8B, 8B is listed as an action item, but it involves a superintendent-formed advisory committee. That's board policy 2230. And those kinds of administrator actions don't need a board action. And in fact, if the committee seems to be set up by the board, which is in 9130 board committees, it comes under the Brown Act. So I think if you should move it to the area where it's just discussion and everybody can talk about how it's a good committee and you don't have to vote on it. Or if somebody makes a motion, I think the motion should specifically mention that you're acknowledging that the superintendent is setting up this committee under board policy 2230. And there will be no question that it's a superintendent's committee. It has nothing to do with the action that the board may take tonight. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Dr. Rudolph, do you have recommendations around how we should approach that? Okay, so we will, when we get to that item, we'll take into consideration the formation of an ad hoc committee, and we'll support, if we vote to, support the superintendent creating that committee, as opposed to approving it ourselves. Is there a motion from trustees?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. On a motion made by Trustee Wheeler and seconded by Trustee Chang, the board votes unanimously to approve the agenda as presented. We'll now move on to item 2, an opportunity for members of the public to address the board concerning items on the closed session agenda. Now is the time for members of the public who would like to address the board regarding closed session agenda items to do so. Tonight's closed session has 2 items. To address the board, you can raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. We appear to have 1 speaker. We will get your timer up for 3 minutes. Mr. Nelson, you may unmute yourself by pressing *6, and you will have 3 minutes to address the board.
Thank you. On the issues of potential litigation, if it is litigation that has already been filed as an administrative action or a court order, it is supposed to be under, it needs significant disclosure in the agenda minutes of what the administrative action that was taken already against the board or the district has been. This is one of those things where there's safe harbor language because this aspect of exclusion of open session has been abused in the past by different government bodies. So make sure when you go into your closed session that you make sure that if this is actually pending litigation and has already been filed, that this and things like that are put in the by name and by case number in the public agenda. I understand it has to do with the student, so you obviously know what it's about, whether it's special education or some an IEP or some other kind of problem that has come up. I'm glad to see that it did note in the other part of this agenda item how much the financial repercussions might be, and it's not a $400,000 or $500,000 item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. At this time, the board will now adjourn to item 3, closed session at 6. At 7:33, the closed session is adjourned and we will reconvene open session. I'd like to report from closed session that a settlement agreement for student number 60013435 was approved by a unanimous vote. This settlement requires reimbursement funding to the student totaling $70,000 and fully resolves the student's claims for the 21-22 school years. We will now move on to the consent agenda. Are there any comments from trustees regarding the consent agenda or questions? We will take public comment on the consent agenda. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on the consent agenda, you can raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone to raise your hand, and we will get a timer up for you on the screen. We appear to have one speaker, so we will allocate 3 minutes. Mr. Nelson, you may unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone, and you have 3 minutes to address the board.
Thank you, President. Unfortunately, you forgot to ask for public comments on the closed session item.
I asked for public comment on closed session during item
report
2.
Out.
On the report
Right,
out?
on the
Okay.
report out. Okay?
Go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
Okay. I would like to remind you that there's a recent published appellate court decision. It's called Fuller versus City of Lafayette. It was decided in the First Appellate Court of California, and it's exactly on this issue of if pending litigation, which is what you had for your first item and what you reported out, when it is which facts are what you have to report, and it can be announced, but it wasn't. But you could do it now. Go back and report about publicly state or announce the facts and circumstances shall be publicly stated on the agenda or announced. That's what the wording of the statute is. It's referenced in this Fuller decision about at 367. And I would like you to amend your statement to include which facts or circumstances was this pending litigation. It wasn't what it was decided on. You may want to take a recess and talk to your chief administrative officer about what these issues are and decide what you're going to do. Otherwise, you will be getting another cease and desist letter from me, because I think this is a clear violation of the Brown Act. And you know I'm going to put you under a microscope for everything you do that may be obstructing the free view of how public business is being transacted by you and the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Dr. Rudolph.
The readout statement was prepared by our lawyers, and disclosing any additional information would actually violate FERPA laws, which is the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act, which pertains to any issues involving a student. So this one, we do meet the standard of law.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. Consent agenda. We will come back for a motion, and as we do so, I would like to comment to thank Ace Hardware in the consent agenda. We note that they donated approximately $227,840 worth of items to Thurkoff Elementary School, including cloth masks, hand sanitizers, sanitizing wipes, and gloves. We really appreciate their partnership. That is a wonderful, wonderful donation from them. Is there a motion from trustees?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On a motion made by Vice President Blakely and seconded by Trustee Berman, the board unanimously votes to approve the consent agenda as presented. We will now move on to item 6, communications. We'll start with 6A, employee organizations. My understanding is that this evening we will have our MVEA president, Sean Dechter, here to address the board with an update, which is what this time is reserved for. We have also received notice that there are several teachers who would like to address the board this evening. And those teacher comments, we would definitely like to hear them from teachers. They will be presented. The best time is during item 7, community comments, as is our normal practice. Mr. Dechter, you may unmute yourself.
All right, dear Mountain View Wisman Board of Trustees, I am Sean Dechter, the Mountain View Educator's president. Thank you for taking the time to listen to teachers' concerns. Dr. Rudolph sent a letter to teachers last week acknowledging the unsustainable level of work that has been put on teachers' plates over the last several years, and we thank him for finally beginning to listen and address these issues, albeit temporarily. Dr. Rudolph also mentioned in his letter that being a teacher requires sacrifice. This is a troubling statement because when we ask teachers to sacrifice, what we are truly sacrificing is students' education. By declining to guarantee smaller class sizes for all students, provide teacher preparation time to allow for high quality instruction for all students, hire yard duty supervisors to keep all students safe, and support sustainable working hours so that teachers can direct all of their energy to students in the classroom. What we are sacrificing is the safety and the education of our students. In a district with a 37% reserve, in one of the most affluent communities in the wealthiest state, in one of the richest countries in the history of the world, we do not believe that there is any reason to sacrifice the education of our students. I will now read a statement from our teachers. We also have 5 teachers who would like to read a statement from their colleagues.
Mr. Dechter, the statements from the teachers will need to come during the community comments section of the meeting.
I was just going to read one and then I was going to pass it on the time. Is that all right?
Because they are not actual representatives of the employee organizations, they are not the union representatives, they will need to address the board during the community comments section, which is following this after there's district committees update, superintendent update, and then the community comments section.
So be it. Thank you for your time. And I look forward to change with the district. It has been very difficult working under the certain conditions that we've been having over the last few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dechter, and thank you for all of your work on behalf of our students and our community. We will now move on to district committees. Are there any representatives of district committees who would like to address the board at this time? Seeing as there are none, we will move on to the superintendent communications.
All right. Well, for those, happy Thanksgiving. That's coming up. So I know we won't meet after this, but please make sure that both you all, as well as those who are listening, that you have a safe week off next week with our students. And just want to reiterate that we really want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves at risk. I know some people normally travel during this time, and so there is a rise in COVID cases across the rest of the country, and so we just want to be mindful that if we're with others, we want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves. I do want to just bring up a couple of things. Also, just want to say thank you to Ace Hardware for the donation. It's really great. I know Derek really appreciates it. And just want to bring up that we have a Scalable vaccine clinic this Sunday. We've been sending out information about this. There are still slots that are available. It is through Safeways at Palo Alto High School. It is from 9 until 4. You can get, if you have a child, Pfizer shot is available with your appointment from 9 to 4. If you need a booster shot, they have the Pfizer booster. You do not need an appointment there. And then they also have flu shots there. So please make sure that you get those. And then
Sunday?
Sunday, yes. Sunday at Palo Alto High School, or Pali, I think is what they refer to it. The other thing, just real quick, is that we are working with, I know that several people have brought up the concern about those students in the most vulnerable areas and having access to it. So we are working with the county, and this will happen before our next meeting, to have a vaccine clinic at Castro Mashaw on December 1st. I think right now we have about 200 doses, and obviously they want to keep trying to push more. So we're super excited that that's taking place also, and just want to let everyone know. And then I know we're talking about COVID updates a little bit later, so I'll reiterate it one more time there. But just wanted to say that, you know, these are two great opportunities. And then again, I signed Eli up. He got his shot today for the spot. So I know that when I was signing him up right around lunchtime, there were tons of spots. So please, please, please take this opportunity to get a shot for your kids if possible.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. We will now move on to item 7, community comments. This is the time reserved for community members to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board and administration welcomes this opportunity to listen. However, in compliance with the Brown Act, the board is not permitted to take action on non-agenda items. One of the challenges of this is that the board cannot directly respond to public community comments at this time because they are non-agendized. If you would like to address the board, you can raise your hand in Zoom by using the raise hand function, or you can press *9 on your phone. And then I'm going to outline the way time is allocated for community comments. We typically allocate 10 minutes for community comments. And so if there are 3 speakers, those 3 speakers will have 3 minutes each. If there are 5 or 4 speakers, then we would allocate 2 minutes per speaker. And sometimes we do have more than 10 speakers or more than 5 speakers, in which case we would allocate 1 minute per speaker and try to make sure that up to 20 minutes we can hear each of those speakers. At this time, I see 5 hands raised. So we want to allocate 2 minutes per speaker. We're going to get a timer up. Oh, there's 4 hands raised. 5. Okay. All right. The first speaker, Douglas Lang, you may unmute yourself and you have 2 minutes to address the board.
Hi, my name is Douglas Lang. I'm a teacher at Crittenden Middle School, and I'll be reading a letter from one of my fellow colleagues in the district. This year, I have 4 preps, including advanced math, algebra and geometry, math 7.1, and 2 levels of RTI with 3 levels of math. One can argue I have 5 preps. My preps during the week are spent on correcting work, giving feedback, responding to emails, posting assignments on Google Classroom, the dashboard and the whiteboard, rewriting lessons because we have a new schedule, different pacing, 3.5 periods per week instead of the 4 periods plus a Wednesday last year. Every week I adjust the pacing guide, which I wrote based on kids' readiness and prepared the dashboard for the next week. I write new tests, new study guides, new reviews, engagement lessons, not to mention new retakes and new answer keys. I need to rework the schedule to accommodate retakes for students. If I'm not writing something new, I'm looking for past assignments and reworking them for this year. I spend a lot of time searching for curriculum to augment Eureka. This in addition to parent and student communication and other duties such as yard duty. I love all these parts of the job because I'm directly impacting the kids in my class, but I don't love it much when there isn't enough time. As it turns out, by the time I've completed weekly tasks, I need to sit down and plan and review the lessons for the next week. This is usually done on the weekends or after work hours when I could get uninterrupted time. This year, precious time that was once in the morning of a late start has been removed. Our staff meetings are weekly at 7:10 a.m. and department and grade level meetings on Thursday afternoons. These meetings do not help me with my job because they include frivolous assignments, take notes and post them when I prove that I'm listening, or conflicting or convoluted initiatives. For example, on October 12th, we were told in the morning to differentiate instruction to all students based on their readiness and to incorporate small group instruction. That same afternoon, we read an article saying that we need to differentiate less and provide rigorous tasks to all. I know that I need to deal with grouping, and I have a lot of experience with small group instruction and small group work. I don't need to sit through their hour PD that restates what I know. I can read an email with announcements. I appreciate when our admin sends us emails with information and doesn't read a slide deck to us. What will help me be the best teacher I can be is provide the best service I can for kids and families is the following. Uninterrupted time every week and longer.
Mr. Lang, I'm sorry, that is the end of 2 minutes, but I encourage you or the teacher whose comments you are reading, or Mr. Dector, someone to email the comments to the board so that we can also all read them. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Danielle Tuffy. Danielle, you have 2 minutes to address the board. You may unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is Danielle Tuffy, and I'm a teacher at Graham Middle School. I'm here to read a statement from one of my colleagues. Class size remains a key concern for me for the following reasons. First, with all the SEL issues that are surfacing as a result of the pandemic, our children need as much small group and/or one-on-one attention as possible. The smaller the class, the more likely we will be able to scan for concerns and effectively address those in a more private setting. Secondly, we've had more English language learners and special education students mainstreamed into our classrooms. Having a more manageable class size would help the teacher be more effective at addressing the needs of those English language learners and students with IEPs. Finally, at this time, many teachers are finding there is a real disparity between the high achieving and the struggling students. In order to differentiate and make significant progress toward closing that gap, teachers will need to have smaller class sizes. In the wake of COVID, I believe it's imperative that we scale back the number of children assigned to each class. By doing so, each student will be able to stretch and grow as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tuffy. Jessica Lee, you may unmute yourself and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Good evening, trustees. My name is Jessica Lee. I am a teacher at Graham Middle School, and I'm reading a statement from one of my colleagues tonight. This has been one of the most challenging years in the 21 years I have been in the district. To begin, the additional yard duty requirements before and after school due to COVID protocol for arrival and dismissal have added 25 minutes of contact time per day, a total of 4,500 minutes over the course of a year, or 15 and a half days, or 290 minutes per day of unpaid work. In addition, short staffing of yard duties has increased recess duty and also necessitated that I assist during lunch, since in my grade level, students are unable to open their food independently. In addition, it is not safe for one classified staff member to supervise children on the playground without another adult. So on a regular basis, when yard duties are pulled, I give up my lunch to ensure the kids are safe on the playground. While this is not mandated by my administrator, I feel that the safety of my students come first. This is not a viable solution. Other jobs that should not be completed by teaching staff, such as cleaning tables, are required due to a lack of dependable custodial services. On numerous occasions, I have needed to clean up tables before allowing students to sit down for their snacks. The shortage of substitutes in the district has also led me to put my own health needs aside in order to avoid the need to split up my class. Class size is also an issue. TK and kindergarten should not be more than 20 students. The SEL and behavioral needs of the students are critically developmental as are academic expectations. These young students have needs that require adult attention in order for them to be successful, and it is nearly impossible to meet these needs in classes of over 20 students. This year is even more pronounced due to the lack of social experiences resulting from COVID. IEP and SST meetings are routinely scheduled for me during my prep period, which requires me to stay after school in order to complete my preparation for the following day. This is also unpaid time, as my prep should not be seen as free time to schedule these meetings. Staff meetings.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Again, I encourage you to email in the rest of the comment. I know 2 minutes is quite short. So we would love to hear more from your colleague or yourself, or however the comments want to be delivered to trustees. Our next speaker is Paulette Sato. Ms. Sato, you may unmute yourself. You will have 2 minutes to address the board.
Yes, good evening. My name is Paulette Sato. I teach at Graham Middle School, 7th and 8th grade English, and I'll be reading one of my colleagues' letters. Class overload. Questions for the board to consider. Can you split your attention 33 ways simultaneously, every minute, all day? Seems inconceivable, defies logic. What if you have more students than I do? What if you have more students than that? I do. Can you give quality, personalized attention to 33 children at the same time? What if you have more students than that? I do. Can you keep 33 students safe while performing a myriad of other requirements? Can you meet the social and emotional needs of 180 children in a day? What if you have more students than that? I do, a lot more. The answer has always been and will always be smaller class sizes and more teachers. It's not an opinion. It's the solution for the betterment of our future communal fabric. To continue to skirt this solution for fiscal reasons is shortchanging the children on a number of levels. We do the groundwork, we lay awake at night, wishing we could get to each and every child, but knowing we logistically cannot. You dictate the logistics, and as a result, we are depleted. It makes us feel like failures. We are not failures. Money issues are complex. Bargaining is complex. Our mission here is crystal clear and simple. What supports the children is very clear. Smaller classes, more teachers. Make good decisions.
Thank you, Ms. Sato. We will now hear from Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson, you may unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone, and you will have 2 minutes to address the board.
Well, I was going to talk about the largest challenge for California schools, public schools.
Mr. Nelson, we're not able to hear you.
I was
There you
going to
go.
talk about the largest challenge for California schools, public schools, which is segregation inequality tied to housing. But, you know, the teachers' concept of what is important is also really important. One of the things that's happened is that this district is not spending its money. It's supposed to be spent on supplementary learning resources for kids, on those that really do need class size reduction. It has been shown that if you reduce class sizes like K in first and second and third, particularly in those schools with English language students who are poor, it will make a 0.2 of a statistical measure improvement for those schools. It only makes a 1/10 sigma improvement if you only do it to 20. And what we're hearing is that some of these classes are over 20 in K and first grade. So yeah, you really have to put your money where research has shown it makes a difference and where your teachers are begging you to make a difference. Increase the class sizes, in particularly starting with those schools socioeconomic disadvantage. Start with Castro, which has more than about 200 who are both English learners and disadvantaged. And Ms. Strahl, you heard about those parents saying their kids need more learning opportunities. They also need smaller class sizes if they're not going to end up 2 or 3 years behind state requirements for graduating for our 8th grade.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Your 2 minutes is done, but please feel free to email any further comments you have to the board. We will now move on to item 8A under review and action. This is AB 361, the state and local agencies rule or law. We will talk about teleconferences with Dr. Rudolph.
Yep. So this is our sort of monthly. We only have one. This is our last meeting of the month. So if the board wishes to continue to do teleconferencing, you would need to make a motion to actually do that for December. And then, of course, at the December meeting, because it's only one meeting, you would do the exact same thing. Also in this meeting, we included the guidelines that we're currently following. Santa Clara County still does have an indoor mask mandate that does apply to schools. So we included, if the board was to decide to open the meeting for the public and have public members come in, we have what we consider our sort of rules or that we would ask people to abide by as part of the information that was included in the package. So staff is, if the board would like to continue to do teleconferencing, you would need to make a motion And again, this would apply to all district committees as well as school sites committees that are either subject to the Green or the Brown Act.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. Are there any questions from trustees? Seeing as there are none, we will take public comment on this item. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on this item, you can raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. We appear to have one speaker, so we'll put up a timer for 3 minutes. Mr. Nelson, you may unmute yourself and address the board. You have 3 minutes.
I think my wife might like it if I had a 3-minute timer. Yeah, I read the part that was added to the agenda, the notes. I think that this addresses many of the problems that I think has happened with the meetings before. In particular, it allows masked attendance by people, for instance, like these teachers that wanted to show up, but they have to follow the protocols that we all know how to do. We've done, I assume everybody on this board has gone, hopefully, to a restaurant since we've allowed in-person gatherings if you're masked. I've gone up to Giants games and saw them do very well near the last of their season. So I think these rules that are appended here that the staff has recommended, well, I don't know if they're recommended to, they proposed to you. I think the new rules are a good opening. It still allows teleconferencing for those people who want to attend and don't want to risk themselves. But other people who've been fully vaccinated and like me have gotten the 3rd booster because like some of us, I happen to be a senior citizen, that allows us to attend in person if we so choose. So I would urge the board to, I guess, since this is an action item, to adopt these new rules that are attached, which allows in-person audience if you are fully masked. It'd be nice even if there is a vaccine card check, but however you want to do it is fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Dr. Rudolph, I do have a question. My understanding was the vote tonight is just on whether or not to still provide teleconferencing and abide by AB 361.
Right.
Is it a vote on whether or not to have people in person in the meetings who are members of the public yet?
No, so AB 361 allows you to continue to do teleconferencing meetings and to allow the public to be able to comment. More specifically, AB 361, which has to be voted on every 30 days now, also eliminates the need. So previously, and so I'm looking at Trustee Chang, when he was on the board, they would have to disclose, if he wasn't in the meeting, they have to disclose their location and then it have to be available, open to the public. The second part that this does is eliminates that need so that if you are teleconferencing in for some particular reason, you don't have to disclose, keep wherever your residence or hotel room open to the public so that you can be a part of it. You are more than welcome to change the format that we currently have, which is sort of this hybrid, we're all meeting, but we're having the community participate electronically. What essentially AB 361 affords you the opportunity to do is that it affords for you to meet and not have the public here. But if you choose not to extend it, then you are opening the door to the public. And then the second thing you would do is that you would essentially, if any of you want to teleconference in for any particular reason, you actually have to disclose a place.
And my understanding is it also applies to all of the committees, like the Bond Oversight Committee, for example. So if we want them Brown Act covered committees to be able to meet virtually, we need to keep updating this.
Right. So Brown or Green Act. So this applies to ELAC, DLAC, PTLC, Bond Oversight Committee. Essentially, it opens the door for all of those. It's not just the board meeting, because all of those follow sort of the format that the board is meeting. And so this by the board voting, you're saying that you believe that the risk is still imminent. And as a result of that, you're keeping your meetings available through teleconference meetings.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. Are there other comments from trustees or a motion? Vice President Blakely and then Trustee Chang.
I believe that the Bond Oversight Committee has been meeting like a couple of times in person, outdoors. But is that a problem for them to meet in person but distanced outdoors? If we approve this, or does this just provide the option?
This definitely provides the option. You technically, I mean, when we spoke with William Tunick about this, he was like, you could have the public outside, and they could comment. But again, in order to facilitate this particular process, to assure that people can participate telephonically, you have to vote AB 361.
Thank you. Trustee Chang.
My comment has to do with I encourage our colleagues here to continue what we're doing right now. I think that we have strike the good balance of public access and also kind of restore the collaboration between the board and us being here together. I see more and more local county agencies actually going towards our direction. So some of the early bodies that had open public meetings have reverted to what we're doing now for their local reasons. And I would also encourage us to see if we can, since this has to be a monthly item, I'm aware of some districts that do this on the consent agenda. I think that this would be something, if we now can say we're going to continue this for the moment, to place it on in the future on our consent agenda, and people can pull it if they think we should make a separate course. So I would encourage us to continue what we do. I would also say if we do continue what we do, maybe we should add another, like an update to this PDF that's attached to the board meeting, because if I was a parent, I would just went to the board meeting and I saw the handout and said, oh, I can speak with the mask directly in person at 1400 Montecito Avenue. I would assume that this is the policy. So I think if we do continue course, I think we need to clarify that on the handout.
Thank you, Trustee Chang. I agree with that.
We can capture that, and then we can also, in December, we can place it on consent.
Right, thank you. If there are no other comments from trustees, is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve all district board meetings, committees, advisory boards, and committee meetings will remain accessible either through telephonic or virtual meetings for the next 30-day period, commencing November 30th through December 29th, 2021. May I add that along with this motion that we move this to the consent agenda?
Sure.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On a motion made by Trustee Berman and seconded by Vice President Blakely, the board unanimously votes to approve all district board meetings, committee, advisory boards, and community meetings will remain accessible either through telephonic or virtual meetings for the next 30-day period commencing November 30th through December 29th of 2021. And the future return of this item will be via the consent agenda. Thank you, trustees. We will now move on to item 8B, Community Recognition Award Committee, with a presentation from Dr. Rudolph.
Yep. I want to set up a process. It was brought to me by trustees, and we would like to set up a Community Recognition Award Committee. So we outlined the process that we're thinking, which is to create an ad hoc committee starting in January. And so the ad hoc committee would only function, start in December. It would function for a limited time. And every year we ask that the board would choose 2 ad hoc committee members. And then the process would be that parents as well as students, parents, students, and community members, as well as board members, could submit suggestions. The ad hoc committee would sort of rank them, make a recommendation to the board, that the board would then, and we would actually get an award, and we'll come back with a criteria, application, everything else. And then in March, around March, the board will actually award the Community Recognition Award to those either one person, organization, or multiple organizations as they see fit. And so it is, I don't want to debate with Mr. Nelson about whether or not you need to vote. I'm perfectly fine with what he suggested. So basically what I'm seeking is approval for direction of a majority of the board to create a superintendent's committee in order under the guidelines or the process that we sort of outlined. And if you would like to amend it, or if you think there's something that's missing, we would just take it back and then we would have it there.
I think my understanding is we could frame it as a vote to undertake a process to establish a community.
Right. So that's what I'm thinking is
Recognition
for
award.
you to approve the process that I've outlined
Okay.
for this establishment of this committee.
I had one question that's pretty quick. As the committee develops criteria, would it be possible that it seems like a teachable moment with our children as well to talk about different civic engagement or service characteristics or ways that people contribute to the community? So will there be kind of an educational piece to this where we can draw students in and really help them think about all of the heroes that they see in our community who are supporting each other and supporting our schools, and recognize those heroes?
We can definitely look into that.
Thank you. Are there further questions from trustees? Trustee Chang.
Dr. Ruff, what are the existing places where we're able to, where you or us as a district are able to recognize community members?
So currently we have a letter that we send out thanking people for, whatever process. We don't have anything that's formalized. I know that, and I'm trying to think of what the name was. So under Dr. Geisel's is like WIFA or something like FY, something like that. So he had that process, but we're not really sure of how that, award was given or who was chosen for it, which is why when this came up, we wanted to sort of create a process that's a little bit more formal. And then we will always know December would be when the board would choose the ad hoc committee. And then we would have a period by which we would allow submission. So obviously we know that we can start like advertising if you see somebody or something like that. And then in March, we can always push it back if you feel like April's a better time and it gives you, or, you don't want to get too close to the end of the year just because other meaty topics come. But if you want to do March or April, then we know that there's a prescribed time that this ad hoc committee is going to go. And we know what the education process or the advertising process is. And so it could be there. And it could be more than once. You could do more like 2 or something like that over the course of a year. You could do 2 times, once, because the ad hoc committee just has to have a defined amount of time. So you could do once in the spring and then once in the fall, which is perfectly fine. You just what I would need is your direction on how you want that process to look. And then from there, we would use that as sort of the process. But there's no, to your earlier question, there is no real defined way. And I think this will define the process moving forward and will set clear that, not only that there's an award, but also sort of the criteria for the award.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand the difference between an ad hoc committee and like a board appointed committee. We don't appoint the members to an ad hoc committee?
So an ad hoc committee, the board can choose for 2 people to be on an ad hoc committee. It cannot be more than 2, otherwise it's subject to the Brown Act. And that ad hoc committee has to have a defined period of time that it is going to meet for a very specific purpose in order to comply with the Brown Act.
So it's a committee of trustees.
It is a committee of
Okay.
trustees.
That's what I was trying to understand. Thank you. Are there further comments from trustees or a motion? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm ahead of myself. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on this item, thank you, trustees. You may raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. We have 1 speaker, so we will allocate 3 minutes for the speaker. Mr. Nelson, you may unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes to address the board.
Yes, what I clearly heard the superintendent say is that he's asking you to start some process that is using board policy 9130, board committees. So this would be something what he was talking about if there are 2 members of the board, but if it is a standing committee, it does come under the Brown Act. So be careful you understand what that issue is, because I think what you're doing is you're setting up a Brown Act committee because it's going to depend on action of the board setting it up. I think it could be less formal than that myself, and that you could just let the superintendent set it up and you could help provide him informal direction. But if you want to have 2 trustees on this committee and it's a standing committee, I'm pretty sure it comes under the Brown Act. But of course, depending on how this goes and how transparent you want to make the operation of this committee, or how opaque, you certainly will be hearing from me if I think you're violating the Brown Act. My suggestion is just let the superintendent do it. He's told you what his process would be. There have been other committees, informal, set up by the superintendent that have included 2 trustees. Bill Lampert and Ellen Wheeler were on one of those committees a number of years ago. It was the Boundary Adjustment Committee or Ad hoc Committee or something like that. This is going to be a standing committee though, so it's still different. Thank you very much. Please read those booklets that tell you how to stay in compliance with the anti-obscured government operations that we require in the state of California.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Dr. Rudolph, I know in the past we've had a policy subcommittee for the board, for example, that was 2 trustees who worked on policy. So if it's 2 trustees, it's not subject to the Brown Act in the sense that it doesn't have to be a public meeting.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rudolph. Is there comments or a motion from trustees? Vice President Blakely?
Well, a couple of things. If it's 2 trustees, I think then it doesn't meet the Brown Act necessarily because it's only 2.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just wondering whether something this formal is really necessary. I love giving awards and giving praise. I definitely got 1 or 2 of the FWAs, like after chairing a parcel tax campaign or that sort of thing. And I think, I'm all for praising people when they really go above and beyond. I'm trying to think of who. I know Fiona Walter got some after she was off. It may have also been related to chairing a bond or parcel tax. And but I think share the thanks. And these were little plaques. I'm not sure I even still have mine, but I don't know that nothing wrong with the committee. I'm just wondering whether it needs to be this formal. I just ask that. Not to be critical, but.
Oh, that's fine. Trustee Chang.
Oh, I agree with following the track of Trustee Blakely and this idea that I don't necessarily think we trustees need to be part of that nominating process. As long as we're in, I think that us at the tail end, formalizing it as a board resolution gives it that extra weight of recognition. But I think that the most important part is the teachers and students and the staff and parents being part of that process. So if removing trustees from the nominating process gives it a more of a informality because it doesn't need to then follow these rules. I think keep the board out of it and just kind of have it come to the board. I think maybe because I think that would give, and in addition to that, as the superintendent's developing the process for this award, one of the things I think is really helps build culture is for us to acknowledge a panel of finalists and not just one, because I think when you acknowledge one, it's a very different feeling versus we acknowledge a small group of people for their services in our community. And I hope that is actually among those small group that we can share their narratives through our social communication, our social media channels and things like that, because I think there's a celebration of doing that. And I actually think it would be really neat if we did if whatever the superintendent's committee creates a group of finalists, actually it'd be really great for those finalists to choose among themselves who gets an award. I think that it takes the edge off them feeling like they lost if they were part of the process of themselves narrowing down to the winner and then brought to us so that we can all celebrate as justice at the tail end.
Vice President Blakely.
I'm just wondering whether it has to be that competitive. If there really are a bunch of people that the cream rises to the top, why don't we give each of them an award? I don't.
So I will say my thinking behind this was just the experience that I've had with awards in other settings. So I'm a reader for the Hoffman Awards for the Santa Clara County School Board Association. And so they have very specific criteria and you go through and kind of rank things and all, anyone who volunteers can be a Hoffman reader and we go through and then there's 3 to 5 awards that are given every year. The PTA Council also gives different levels of community service awards and there's different criteria for them. People submit nominations. So I think at this point we have kind of this amorphous blob of we would like to be recognizing these people. We want to figure out a way to do it. We want to figure out a way to add the committee. Dr. Rudolph, can you do so? And I think that that's the stage that we're at right now. It's just, this is more about, does the board want to give direction to establish some sort of community recognition award, I think. Trustee Chang.
I think that I agree, keep it broad and let them work on it. I think the one thing that'd be helpful is for us to decide are we okay staying off the process? And I'm advocating we stay off the process and let it just come to us. And I think when it does come back to us, I think if we pass a resolution, we should provide a really nice copy of the resolution. As you've seen some bodies get a really beautifully printed resolution for them, and look forward to us find some way to kind of acknowledge that in this room as well. But until then, like us staying out of the process, is that something the board supports?
Yeah, I'm in favor of us staying off the process. Or, I know that we have these other committees that we sit on. I wonder if it could be just another one of those.
Or we could have a board member who attends or something.
When those come up, attends those meetings, just to make it less of a formal process and letting the superintendent manage that.
Works for me.
It could also be that principals, the people that I've seen get them over the years in the prior regime, they were people that were really, like, everybody knew what all they were doing, and it was just a nice way to say thank you. And I imagine since, our principals are going to know who's really, really active at their schools. And then there's some people, wonderful people who are very active, on district committees. But, I would certainly listen to the principals just in terms of ideas. But I think we're going to have these people that surface. So I just don't want to over-engineer it. That's just my thought.
All right. Is there a motion we can cobble together out of this?
I don't think you need one.
We don't need it. Okay. We're just giving direction and not taking action tonight on this action item. All right. We will now move on to.
I'm really glad you're doing it though.
I'm excited about it. We will now move on to item 8C, the Santa Clara County Committee 2021 election. Dr. Rudolph.
Yep. So I turn this over to y'all for we do this every year, sort of an annual election committee, and I believe that some of us are more familiar with the people who are on the board. I mean, technically, I guess we are all familiar with at least one person who sits on there, but I think in terms of the other people who are there, I leave that to y'all to discuss.
Trustee Willer.
Yeah, so I think it's more formal than that. It's not something we do every year. This is an election of 2 representatives from each supervisorial district, and they alternate. So this year we're doing districts 1 through 5, and next year it'll be the other districts. And representatives rotate also. So like I ran, I can't even remember what I said, in 2015 or something like that, and then ran for re-election. Last year, I did not run for re-election. It was the other person who represents our area. So, but it is this is the committee we talk about every year at a reorg meeting, and there's always some confusion about it. This is the committee we're talking about. And there's a variety of ways that boards select the people for these committees. Sometimes some boards will have just the president do it, and won't even come to the board. And that's where you fill in a line and then you say, the board president's the person who does this. It's always been the norm of our board to bring it up and discuss it. And so this is that meeting where we, it seems kind of strange, but the way it's done is every district in the county votes for representatives from these committees, from these areas. So you're not just voting for our area, you're voting for all three areas there. So you've got, I guess it's Mike Wasserman's area. So you've got the incumbent there is Denise Ramon Herrera, and then there's a number of people who are also running, who put their names forward. In area 3, there's just one person who's put himself forward, nobody else is running, so you don't need to do anything there. And then in our area, it's me who is the incumbent, and then one other person has put his name forward. But we vote on all three. We vote on all three areas. So, I can advocate for area 1, because I know the representative and our board can decide what they want to do, but I can provide some context about my experience with her. And then, of course, I hope that you vote for me.
Thank you, Trustee Wheeler. I would love to hear your insight regarding District 1.
Okay, so I referenced this in my letter, that this committee is fairly complex. So it's pretty rule oriented, and like every situation is different, and every situation's the same, but every requester is different, and every area is different. So my point of view is having someone with experience who knows how to navigate these complexities already, is a plus. And I will say that I've been impressed with Denise Ramon Herrera in her work on the committee. And, she said, she sent an email to us today, and it's in her materials. She has served as the vice chair and the chair of this committee. So not only does she understand the complexities of the committee itself, but she also understands the complexities well enough that she was able to chair the committee for a year. It's a year long. And it's meaningful to me that she spent a career working for Los Gatos Union High School District. So, so she's very familiar and showed her love for that community by working there her whole time. And I'll say she's also nice to work with. So, she's not somebody I'd like to try to, carefully warn you off of. I'm doing the opposite. I think she's very good. And one thing she said in her email today, and you saw it if you read the resumes, every single person who put themselves forward for this position is, highly qualified. You'd hope that we would get some people with those qualifications to run for school board or something like that. But anyway, I would recommend to my board to vote for Denise Ramon Herrera for Area 1.
Thank you, Trustee Wheeler. Are there any questions from trustees? Vice President Blakely?
I'm just wondering, had more service on some of the committees than I have. Are you familiar with any of the candidates in that?
I am not familiar with the Liscados candidates or the District 1 candidates. Trustee Chang.
A question for Trustee Wheeler. When you in your work in past with this committee, does it help or not make a difference if the people that have are board members or have background as on school boards?
So one of the things that I like about this committee, it's a mixture of people from a variety of backgrounds, and there are some school board members. So, I'm always biased towards school board members, because they know a lot about, their particular district, and they know how, rules and regulations go. But this is a committee that, and I reference this in my own letter, you're talking about the entire county. So, just like when you become a school board member, you have to think past your own school. When you join a committee like this, you have to look past your own district. So it's not just, well, this is the way we do it in our district. It's not. It's a county committee. And I will say that I think the current committee members work well together. We've been working together with these board members for a couple of years now, so we all kind of know our stuff. And then the director of the committee is terrific. I mean, she leads us, Suzanne Carrick, and then Dr. Mary Ann Dewan attends these meetings also. So it's very professional, very well done. But to your point, I don't think there's a huge benefit to being a school board member.
Trustee Berman.
So I saw that there was a letter from Denise Ramon Herrera and Peter Neumer. Were there letters from these other three
in the packet?
candidates? I saw the resumes.
They're in the resumes. If you keep scrolling through, some of them submitted letters with their resumes. So Trustee Wheeler did. Yep. There's a parent who is a candidate who submitted a letter. It's part of the agenda packet.
Yes, I read through it, and maybe I just missed Armando's and Roberts and Emma's, but I read the letters from Denise and Peter Neumer. I felt like from the resumes, the letters were very telling of their experience and their intent and why they were committed to this committee and what made them really qualified. So I'm glad to hear your feedback about Denise Ramon Herrera. It sounded like she has the right experience and oftentimes with the incumbent, it's just nice to have that continuity if you know that there is like a strong group that works well together and is forward-minded about the work. It's just great to have that input about her. I was impressed with her resume and her experience, and I'd like to support Denise Ramon Herrera.
Thank you. James submitted a letter as well within that packet. Trustee Berman.
Was this the ones that I missed from District 1?
Okay.
Armando Rupp. So I'll double check it.
I don't think everybody put in a letter with their application.
And because I felt like I felt like I missed something about them not having a letter. I saw their sort of professional experience, but the letters were really telling about their work and their commitment to.
I agree. The letters were very helpful. Should we go for a public comment? All right. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on this item, you may raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Seeing as there's no public comment at this time, are there comments or a motion from trustees? Vice President Blakely.
I move that we vote for District 1 for Denise Ramon Herrera, District 3 James Van Pernis, and District 5 Ellen Wheeler.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? On a motion made by Vice President Blakely and seconded by Trustee Berman, the board has voted unanimously to elect for District 1, Denise Ramon Herrera, for District 3, James Van Pernis, and for District 5, our very own Trustee Ellen Wheeler.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you.
Well, thank you for your service, Trustee Wheeler. This is work we're talking about. This is not a vacation. This is work. We will now move on to item 8D, resolution number 01111821, affirming our commitment to fighting hate, with a presentation from Dr. Rudolph.
All right. Unfortunately, we've had another campus that was hit with hate speech. In this instance, it was anti-Semitic rhetoric that was in pro-Nazi propaganda that was put on on the side of one of the solar panel beams. And then 2 weeks before that, or a week and a half before that, the Montaloma bathroom that the city, as operated by the city, was tagged extensively. And so, we've seen an uptick over the last couple of years with different items, right? And so this is just the latest one, the anti-Semitic rhetoric. We have reached out to the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, and I brought this issue up and said, there's multiple issues coming up, and we're sort of looking for a solution. But obviously, one of the biggest steps that the board can take is just continuing this affirmation that of denouncing incidents like this. You have, over the course of my tenure here, not only affirmed Black Lives Matter, also created a sanctuary school district. You named a school after not only someone who was in an internment camp, but also after someone who is an illegal immigrant. You've obviously affirmed the rights of AAPI and condemned hate speech towards them. You've stood up for the rights of Muslims as well as Jewish. And so, this week is Anti-Hate Week. We know that there was a march. I think a parent actually sent a message to us just recently also asking that whether or not we could also do a walk like that was in Moscatos. But I do think it's important, for all of us to, as I stated in the letter that I sent out, for all of us to remember that hate speech is not limited to just one group, and that it does affect all of us, right? It affects hate speech towards, there's a lot that's tied up when it's anti-Semitic. There's a lot that's tied into when it's anti-Asian, whether it's towards our LGBTQ community or girls. So all of this, I think this motion or this resolution is not only an affirmation, but it's confirming our commitment that these types of incidences are not welcome on our campus. And then again, to stand in solidarity with our Jewish residents, our students and families who attend our schools. And then also, again, for all of the other students who have been affected and families who have been affected by hate speech over the last couple of years and even before the board started taking a more outwardly stance against these issues.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. Are there questions from trustees? Trustee Chang.
Thank you. Dr. Rudolph, in the board Q&A that's posted on the district website, one of the questions asked was, where's the Holocaust education in our, and the response was that it's in the 10th grade standards there. So I was wondering, are there any informal points within our K-8 districts that we, where maybe one school side or it's commonly teaching about kind of the Jewish community experience or anti-Semitism or, reading the diary of Anne Frank, or just like, are there places you're aware of that there's some less formal touch points on this?
And so I think it occurs in a lot of different instances throughout our district. I know Crittenden just went through a whole SEL lesson about it. Normally you see it also in the Project Cornerstone activities. I know Bob just recently did a series of activities centered around this. So it is a little bit more informal. But I do think teachers try their best to bring these types of topics up. And they typically do it in a way that's a little bit more age appropriate based off of the grade level that they're teaching. I don't know if Ms. Bauer, Chief Academic Bauer, Officer Bauer would like to chime in a little bit more about anything else.
Sorry. I could say I would agree with Dr. Rudolph. I think it's done more on a informal basis. A lot of times I think brought up based on experiences or things that are happening at the time at the school and the district. So it's not something that we formally have put in place across our curriculum, but it's definitely something that's done based on teacher decision-making and site decision-making, and probably more so, like Dr. Rudolph said, with our Project Cornerstone and our CEL programs.
I will add, when I was teaching at Stevenson, I definitely knew teachers in the school who, different grade level teams who were addressing education around the Holocaust and the experience of different individuals in it and anti-Semitism. So I think we have quite a few equity-minded staff members in our district, which I'm thankful for. And so they do take on making sure that we all understand that everyone is welcome here and hate speech is not welcome. Trustee Wheeler.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I donated a book to every school library that had a theme of the Holocaust. It wasn't, it was age appropriate, I thought, for like mature fifth graders. And I heard from some school librarians that they were very grateful for that book. And so I know that the school librarians are using it too.
If there are no further questions from trustees, we'll move to public comment on this item. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment, you may raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. I see that we have one speaker, so we will allocate 3 minutes. We're going to get a timer up on the screen for you. Jennifer Avalos, you may unmute yourself. You will have 3 minutes to address the board.
Yes, good evening, trustees. My name is Jennifer Avalos. I'm a parent. I have kids at Montaloma and Crittenden. I'm also the Montaloma PTA president, and I'm also a clinical social worker. I have some concerns about the hate speech that's going on, and I really do appreciate the consistent reaffirming, but I don't think it's enough anymore. I do think that we need to follow Los Gatos' lead. I think that standing together as a community is needed. The statements are really great and they show support, but the more we stand together and show that we support versus writing statements is more appropriate now. That is all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Avalos. Are there comments from trustees? Trustee Chang.
Thank you. I'll first off say I support the resolution. I appreciate it being brought to us. Procedurally speaking, I do continue to think that with resolutions community interested, I think it should come back again on a consent agenda so there's more chance for community to be aware and provide input. That aside, I support this. I think that in addition to this resolution, I do think that the board should reflect on if we need to make a stronger position on Holocaust education. I know we don't know who did this graffiti, but I think it's safe for us to assume that it was either a graduate or school district or a current student, given their familiarity with our schools. And if it's one of our students, one of the best ways to prevent something like this to happen is to properly educate them on what the impact of what they're doing. I think that for I teach. I'm a middle school history teacher, and in 8th grade, Holocaust is a large unit in what I teach. So I'm really close to this. And so when I got the email that something happened on the graffiti, it very much stood out to me that the graffiti was put up on the the night of Kristallnacht, which is the night of broken glass. And maybe the student is maybe completely a coincidence, but for community, the pain is particularly heightened because a lot of our students will have no clue what the night of broken glass is. But in 1938, many people see that as the start of the Holocaust, when members of the public and semi-paramilitary groups arrested and detained, arrested 30,000 Jewish members, started sending them to concentration camps. Over 200 synagogues were burned down over the night of December 9th and December 10th. And that was the night that this graffiti against went up in our community. So I think that educating our community on this, I think, is our best medicine, in addition to this resolution as a step towards that direction. And I think that school board members, like we rarely try to prescribe curriculum, right? Because it's kind of, there's some communities that do that too much. But I think in a situation like this, where we're seeing anti-Semitic graffiti going up across Mountain View, perhaps done by a student or an alum of our district, I think that sends a message that we should educate more. There's a survey, actually it was one of the biggest surveys done of this type, the Cooperman survey on young people's attitudes towards the Holocaust. Was done in 2020. And the Cooperman survey, if we just look at the California results, 17% of young people believe the Holocaust is a myth in California. If we add 4% who are unsure, that's 21% of Californian young people believe the Holocaust is a myth, or think it's unsure if it happened. If we ask students if they've ever heard of Auschwitz, 41% of students have not heard of, young people, I shouldn't say students, but young people in California have not heard of Auschwitz. So I think that I hope we can kind of circle back to this and see if we need to do something more strategic in pushing out Holocaust education and teach about anti-Semitism. Thank you.
Trustee Berman.
Thank you, Trustee Chang. I completely agree with that. I fully support this resolution and want to make public that I'm fully committed to equity, inclusion, and anti-racism in our district and in our community. I support policies and practices and procedures which ensure that racism does not affect outcomes and experiences for our students and our families. I want to thank Dr. Rudolph for his letter that he sent to families today condemning these acts of vandalism and affirming our position to combat hate and intolerance. I'm raising my children in a Jewish and Mexican-American household. My parents are immigrants from Mexico, and my husband's grandmother escaped Austria at the age of 12, 13 when the Nazis arrived, knocking at our door. We drove across country to Maryland last year and the summer of 2020. There was so much uncertainty around COVID, and my biggest fear is that my girls would not get to hear her story about the way she escaped and came to the United States. She spoke to my girls that day when we arrived about her experience when she was 12 years old and the planes were flying overhead at her all-girls school, dropping leaflets. When the principal walked through all the classrooms and said, all the Jewish girls out in the hall, listen up, go back to your classroom, get your stuff, get out, and never come back. No Jews allowed. She didn't know what she did wrong. She remembers the day where all the synagogues were burned and the Jewish books were burned, and when her brother and her father were arrested. And the fear she had when she was marched out of the house where she was staying with her mother by a Nazi soldier. So Grandma Trudy has a remarkable story. She and her parents and her brother were lucky to have escaped. Many of her family and friends and neighbors did not. My two girls, my 8 and 10-year-old children, are deeply impacted by acts of hate, and they struggle to understand why people would treat others with such cruelty simply because of their race, religious belief, sexual orientation. Sometimes I struggle with what to share and how to share it. Those conversations are critical, and our ability to have them as parents and as educators is necessary. So thank you, Dr. Rudolph, for reminding us in your letter that in order to be anti-racist, anti-hate, and in an inclusive community, we need to talk to our children and address our own biases. Director Henderson does a wonderful job of creating a monthly Better Together poster online with resources and lesson ideas. I'd like to see us build on that and include additional resources for parents such as the resources on the website for United Against Hate or facing our history. And so that we have the resources that we need to speak to our children, to speak to our students, and really make an impact on our community and really become the anti-racist community that we strive to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Berman. I thank you for sharing your mother-in-law's story and the impact that actions like this have on your own family and your children as well. I think we have seen a visceral change in our country in the last at least 5 years that has been damaging and painful for adults, but has also really impacted our children. And when I see, the graffiti that's going up, we're seeing things like Pepe the Frog, we're seeing we're seeing racist terminology and drawings, and we're seeing anti-Semitic terminology and drawings. I think speaks to not just how frightened people are, but that there are people in our community who experience pain and then express it through hate, or experience fear and express it through hate. And our job is to be an educational institution. And I agree, the more that we educate our students, our parents, our community about the impacts of hate, the more we can assure that all of our students can thrive. So thank you. And thank you, Dr. Rudolph, for putting this resolution together quickly. Trustee Chang reached out to me, and then I reached out to Dr. Rudolph, and this happened very quickly. But it was wonderful that the City of Mountain View also recognizes United Against Hate Week, and it seemed like a wonderful time to bring this forward again. I agree with the idea that the more actions we can take, the better. So I will personally be reaching out to the parent who spoke earlier to see how I can help with organizing a walk. And I encourage anyone else in the community who wants to participate in something like that to reach out, and let's see what we can do. Is there a motion from trustees?
Make a motion, let me find it. I'd like to make a motion that the board adopt resolution number 01-111821, affirming our commitment to the work necessary to fight oppression and hate in all forms, and proclaiming the week of November 15th through November 19th in conjunction with jurisdictions throughout the Bay Area as United Against Hate Week in the School District of Mountain View, Wisman.
All those in favor?
Aye.
On a motion made by Trustee Berman and seconded by Trustee Wheeler, the Board of Trustees unanimously votes to adopt resolution number 01-111821, which affirms our commitment to do the work necessary to fight oppression and hate in all forms, and proclaims the week of November 15th through November 19th as United Against Hate Week in conjunction with other jurisdictions throughout the Bay Area and in the Mountain View Wisman School District. Thank you, trustees. Trustee Wheeler?
Yeah, so are we going to, when there are acceptable and meaningful resolutions, we often do a choral reading of them.
Would trustees?
Yes, we do that now.
Yep. Would trustees like to do a choral reading of this resolution? All right. Let's make sure everyone has it up. In the past, we've done alphabetical over Zoom, but I think we can just start and go down the line. So Trustee Chang, if you want to start us off.
Affirming our commitment to work necessary to fight oppression and hate in all forms, and proclaiming the week of November 15th through November 19th in conjunction with jurisdictions throughout the Bay Area as United Against Hate Week in the School District of Mountain View, Wisman.
Oh, I was thinking I'm going to start with the whereas. All right. Whereas the Mountain View Wisman community is diverse in race, creed, ethnicity, nationality, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, and political views. Our strength is derived from this diversity, and all individuals who learn, work, and partner with us should feel safe and respected. And
whereas we acknowledge the dangers and repercussions of hate and bigotry, as we have witnessed the violent and hateful bias-motivated violence throughout the United States and in the greater Bay Area, especially the rise in anti-Semitic and anti-AAPI crimes. And
whereas Mountain View Wisman School District wishes to ensure that our community will continue fighting against hate by welcoming all people encountering any hate or biases that are a threat to the safety, civility, and efficacy of our schools, neighborhoods, residents, and all people. And
whereas oppression in all forms is more than just the sum of individual prejudices, and systemic oppression has historical antecedents that we must face, and that in order to address, must forge multi-ethnic, multicultural, multilingual alliances. And
whereas Mountain View is no place for hate or ignorance, and that Mountain View Wisman affirms its commitment to stand united against hate, to do the consistent and hard work of operationalizing our values of equitable access and fairness in society, committed to democracy, free expression, and to the celebration of unity and diversity. And
whereas the Mountain View Wisman School District will continue its work in diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts as prioritized in Strategic Plan 2027 and as evidenced in past board resolutions, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, March 18th, 2021, Black Americans, June 18th, 2020, Safe Haven / undocumented immigrants, September 21st, 2017, reproductive rights, November 4th, 2021, in order to ensure we are creating and maintaining a learning environment for our community that is inclusive, identity affirming, and that provides equitable access to high quality educational opportunities. And
now, therefore, the Mountain View Wisman Board of Trustees do hereby resolve that we will observe the week of November 15th through November 19th in conjunction with jurisdictions throughout the Bay Area, United Against Hate Week in the school district of Mountain View Wisman, and call on all community members to fight oppression in all forms, build cross-cultural relationships, and stop hate in order to ensure a more equitable and inclusive community in Mountain View Wisman and the greater Bay Area.
thank you, trustees. On that note, I think this is a good time for a short recess. So we will recess at 8:55 and come back at, let's say, 9:02. All right, we are back from our short recess. I wanted to point out something in case it wasn't clear from the resolution itself that we just discussed in item 8D, that the United Against Hate Week that we declared will be in perpetuity. So the future plan is that annually our district will hold a United Against Hate Week. We will now move on to item 9A, the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, with a presentation from our Chief Academic Officer, Kathy Bauer.
Good evening, trustees. I will share my screen. And so, okay. So tonight I'm here to talk with you about a new grant opportunity that has been provided through legislation called the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant. As always, it's definitely aligned to our strategic plan. As we provide professional development to our employees, we improve instructional practices, student social emotional health, our culture, our employees, and support our students and our resources. This money is one-time funding to provide professional learning. It's a product of Assembly Bill 130, but it wasn't amended. It was amended through AB 167 and wasn't signed into law until the end of September. Our grant allocation is approximately $1.2 million. So the requirements, we are required to develop and adopt a plan by December 30th, 2021 that outlines the expenditures of our funds. And we must present the plan in a public meeting and then again, have it adopted in a subsequent meeting. There's no template. And there's some reporting requirements. We have to report detailed expenditure information by September 30th of each year with a report due, a full report due on September 30th, 2026. And any funds we don't spend must be returned. Okay, so there are 10 areas where we can spend these block grant funds. We can spend them on coaching and mentoring, instruction for literacy, re-engagement for pupils, social emotional learning, positive school climate, inclusive practices, language acquisition, professional learning networks, ethnic studies curriculum, and or early learning and childhood development. So the categories are very broad. So for us, there is a really short amount of time for us to prepare this plan and get it to you in time to do this meeting and then the December 9th meeting so we could meet the December 31st, 2021 deadline. And so we determined that our partnership with the Santa Cruz Silicon Valley New Teacher Project meets the criteria for funding under number 1, coaching and mentoring of staff serving in an instructional setting, including beginning teacher and administrator induction. Just as a reminder, for all of our new teachers, after earning their preliminary teaching credential, they have to complete a state-approved 2-year program to clear their credential. The programs have to include an ability for the new teachers to acquire skills and apply knowledge and learn in professional preparation. They have to have a qualified mentor. They must meet with that mentor at least 1 hour per week. And then there's an assessment system built in. So in order for us to meet our induction requirements, like I mentioned, we partner with the Santa Cruz Silicon Valley New Teacher Project. We do provide 2 district staff as our mentors. And this program is free to our teachers, and it serves as an incentive for our teachers coming to our district, especially when we have teachers retiring or leaving the area, and there are less teachers entering and graduating from teacher preparation programs. So teachers do look for districts that provide this type of program. The number of our teachers in induction has remained fairly stable over the course of the last few years, although we see a small decrease in 21-22, but we've also seen some declining enrollment, which means we didn't hire more teachers, so we're not providing induction to as many. So program costs, it's not an inexpensive program. Currently, we pay for this out of using a combination of our Title II funds and the general fund. The program costs $2,000 per participating teacher per year, plus the cost of our mentors. So for 21-22, we estimate that we'll spend almost $400,000 on this program, and over 4 years, $1.5 million. That number will vary slightly depending on the number of teachers in our program. And by using this grant for this purpose, pending any decreases in Title II funding or significant increases in the number of teachers needing induction, we should be able to fully fund the program for the next 4 years without encroaching on the general fund as we currently are. So some things to consider. As I mentioned before, we were only notified of the grant allocations and plan requirements on October 22nd with the informational meeting held on November 9th. So this has been a very short turnaround for us. And again, with the requirement for 2 meetings, it left us a very short amount of time to get ready. We have both of our employee associations convening professional development committees to discuss needs aligned to Strategic Plan 2027 and the LCAP, but that's not happening until after the first of the year. And this plan is just one of many new plans and initiatives that we are creating and implementing this year based on new legislation signed into law for the 2021 school year. And these new plans are in addition to what we already are focused on with learning recovery, the LCAP strategic plan. So for our next steps, we would like to bring the plan back for final approval on December 9th to ensure that we can secure the funding. We'll create a system to log our activities and expenditures in preparation for our reporting requirements. And then we'll continue to analyze our data and collaborate with our association committees so that we can determine what new professional development needs we have in alignment with our strategic plan and our LCAP. So with that, I will stop sharing and I will take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer. Are there questions from trustees? Trustee Chang.
Thank you. A question about the legislative intent when they passed this. Did they provide any kind of language or guidance on like what they were hoping districts would spend the funds on?
In the meeting that we went to, they really went through all 10 categories and gave us lots of different examples.
If there are no further questions from trustees, we will go to community comment. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on this item, you can raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Seeing as there are none, are there comments from trustees? Vice President Blakely.
I just want to thank all the staff in this crazy year for managing to pull together a viable plan. This is something that we've done for years and I think need to continue doing. And it's great that it essentially will free up other funds from the general fund that we could dedicate towards other needs as they arise and plan in a more timely manner. So thank you.
Trustee Berman.
Yes, I agree with that comment. And I also just wanted to add that in reading the site plans, it looks like all of our schools are doing, have these social emotional learning and mental health services sort of built into their plan. So these are things that are happening at our school sites. So I appreciate putting the induction program into this, giving sort of that short turnaround, because as you said, I think this is an opportunity to sort of be creative with our resources. I've heard that in January, there's going to be maybe a more formalized meeting to think about how, what SEL will look like in the coming years for our schools. So I think this is terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I also appreciate that this was turned around in a little over a week, given when the legislation was finalized and the meeting was held. And the one thing that I want to keep in mind is that with one-time funds, we do need to, and we will, remember that at some point this won't be a part of our budget, but induction will still be important and necessary. And so we are in that challenging position where sometimes it seems like we have, especially with the response to COVID, we're flush with cash all of a sudden. But actually, most of these things we have to spend down the money in anywhere from 1 to 4 years. It's part of the requirements, or we have to give it back. And it's not in perpetuity. We're not going to keep getting it. So we have to figure out how to allocate that money in a fiscally prudent way, but also in a way that's still going to be sustainable 4 years from now, when our state and country may have moved on from focusing on schools, unfortunately. Is there a motion from trustees? Oh, you know what? We're on discussion. Thank you. Do you need anything further from us, Dr. Rudolph? All right. Thank you, Ms. Bauer. We really appreciate it.
Did we do public comments on this? I forget.
Yes, we did. All right, we will now move on to item 9B, planning for the annual organizational meeting. Dr. Rudolph?
So a couple of years ago, the board asked to have this item put on before the annual organizational meeting. It gives you the opportunity to discuss sort of what the next roles are going to be in the event that you want to make changes. And so this is just your opportunity to discuss what you possibly will be voting on, or if someone is interested in a specific position, this also gives you the platform to do it so that nobody is surprised.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. Are there questions from trustees? All right, well, Trustee Wheeler.
Yeah, so I have definite thoughts about president and vice president, but I want to put my name forward for clerk. I've said in prior meetings that I don't plan to run for re-election, so next year will be my last year. I came in as clerk. I'd like to go out as clerk. I also think that Trustee Chang, whether you are clerk next year or not, you would be kind of logically the person in line after the person who's going to be vice president. So I don't feel like I'm taking something away from you. And anyway, that's my only comment for myself.
All right. Something that's helpful for me is if we could kind of run down who's doing all of these committees right now, just to remind us. So we're talking about positions, but also we have in the packet, Trustee Wheeler, all of the different board committees as well. So it's about both. The agenda item is about both.
So I'll say to you, during this meeting, I don't recollect ever talking about committee assignments, but if you would like to do that tonight, that's fine. It's in the past, in my recollection, it's always been who is interested in officers. So, and it can be a pretty short meeting, and I hope it's going to be a pretty cooperative meeting.
Okay. Trustee Chang.
I concur. I think that it'd be useful to do these after, like, kind of following the tradition and have the committees decided after the officers are done. Because I don't think.
Oh, after the officers.
I don't think this needs a two-part process the way maybe.
Then could we do this just, for for my brain? Could we at least list who's already serving so that when we hit the next meeting, I feel like every time we roll into that meeting, it takes us a while to figure out who's already in each position, and that makes the discussion longer.
I also don't see any reason why we can't, if people are interested.
Okay.
Our opportunity to talk about it, right?
So currently bond oversight is you, Vice President Blakely?
Yeah.
Okay. And then CHAC is also you? Okay. DAC? What? District Advisory Committee.
So theoretically, it's me, but I also haven't received emails about it.
Oh.
And I don't know how frequently it's met.
It's meeting.
But that's the committee that I am the representative to. And Laura, do you think that you are alternate to that committee or co-rep or something?
I may be. I think I've attended it like twice over the last few years, but I thought you were the primary person.
Yeah. And then DLAC is Trustee Berman. MVEF, Trustee Berman. The Parcel Tax Oversight Committee.
Theoretically, that was me, but I think in practicality, Trustee Blakely has been doing that one. There was a period where I wasn't receiving the invites directly, so I missed a few meetings there. So operationally, Trustee Blakely represented this term.
I only went once because I thought you had it. So, but there was one time where at the last minute, I realized that you weren't on the distribution and I was, and I think we got that straightened out.
All right, the PTA Council has been me in my role as president.
President doesn't need.
It doesn't have to be the president. The previous year, I was also the PTA Council. Santa Clara County School Boards Association.
So, and that has been me, and for the past many years. I also think that now that you're a delegate and you're going to be more involved with that committee than before, and that anyone can attend those meetings. The only issue about representative is who gets to vote for the board. So anyway, it makes sense to me that you would be the representative now or next year.
I will be at those meetings anyways.
Yeah.
So.
And hopefully they'll be virtual for a long time because that drive is a killer.
Yeah, it has made it much more feasible. And then the Equity Committee is also me. I will say the Equity Committee just started meeting in August or September. We've only had, I want to say, 3 meetings at this point. So it feels like we're just beginning the work. And we have a policy subcommittee that's working on trying to come up with an equity policy idea. So I don't have to, but I would love to stay on it through the end of this school year at least, because it's a baby and we're just learning how to walk, and I want to get through that process with the team. All right, and then for positions, so Trustee Wheeler, you said you're interested in clerk. Mm-hmm. Vice President Blakely, I am very much hoping you will be interested in serving as president.
I'm interested in serving as president.
My
husband is going to shoot me.
But I will sleep well at night. And then Clerk Berman, I'm hoping you will be interested in serving as vice president.
Yes, that's good with me.
Good. All right. Should we take public comment on this real quick? Or is there? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I guess we sort of skipped over. I was just going to ask if people were happy with the committee assignments or wanted to consider some rejiggering. That's all.
Let's do public comment so we don't forget it. And then let's talk about that. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment on this item, you can raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. We have 1 speaker, so we'll put up a timer for 3 minutes. Mr. Nelson, you may unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Hi. I guess I'm going to have the most comments for this meeting, aren't I, Madam President? I tried sending an update of some material that wasn't included in the packet, which was the statutory handling of these committees. They're all over the board. Did everybody on the board get that, President?
I can go back and check. We have received many, many emails in the last 48 hours, so I can't claim to remember it all.
Okay, I can understand that. I'll just go over it briefly. The Bond Oversight Committee is a statutory standing committee required by the bond, and it's only advisory to the board, and the board member can only be an observer, and that's optional. The Community Health Awareness Council is a multi-decade legal joint powers authority. So it has a legal corporation, and the board representative is a legal voting member of that corporate board. The District Advisory Committee is a superintendent's advisory committee. It has no legal role, for instance, in the consolidated app, but many other superintendent assigned topics. And I don't know if the person there is a member of the committee or what. The Mountain View Educational Foundation, of course, is an independent nonprofit, and you all know it very well. The Parcel Tax Oversight Committee is a required board advisory committee, and the board member can only be an observer, and that's optional. The Pta Council is an independent nonprofit, but their bylaws make the board member a voting member. The Santa Clara School Boards Association is an independent nonprofit corporation, I think incorporated within the last 10 years. You'll have to ask Ellen on that. And the board member is a member and also gets a voting membership. The Equity Committee is another superintendent's advisory committee. And that's all. Signing off.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. And trustees, I apologize. I just answered a question in the middle of public comment, and I know that is not something I should have done. I apologize for not following protocols on that. So are there other interests or, oh, actually, before we go on to just feeling out what interests might be around different committees, Dr. Rudolph, I was curious if, I know we have a health and wellness committee that is an advisory committee. It's not overseen by the board, but I've always been curious about what's going on there, and I'd love to assign a trustee to attend those meetings and participate.
Is it oversight or?
Probably more in the same way on the equity committee. I participate, but I'm not in charge of nobody's voting in that committee.
Ms. Jimbo, I see you on there. You wanna, I don't know how frequently her committee meets.
Yeah, I'm not sure how active it is right now, but.
Yes, we are meeting, and we have a schedule through January, I believe. I can send the schedule to you.
That would be wonderful. And it's the type of committee that's more people meet and talk and discuss, but aren't taking votes on specific actions.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Chang?
Indeed, if there's just a board observer for that, for health and wellness, I would be interested in doing that. Unless there's another board member who wishes to observe that.
I think that's great to know. I also think you should look at the calendar when she sends it and make sure it works too. But we're adding more work, and so we will need people to do it. Are there other feelings from board members about committees?
I would like to stay on the DLAC committee. That's something I really enjoy being a part of. And I see this as an opportunity to just learn about all of these committees. So I'm currently on the MVEF. The MVEF meetings are the ones I attend every month, which I'm also fine keeping, but it might be a nice opportunity to sort of rotate through and try one of these other ones if anybody would like to swap.
I would like to stay involved with TAC, and I enjoy the block, but yeah.
Trustee Berman, so I started going to the PTA Council meetings when I was the board vice president, and I found them incredibly informative, and I really enjoy participating in them. And it was good practice to get ready for being board president as well, because in those committees, the board representative presents to everyone at the PTA Council about items of interest at the school board. I would be sad to give it up, but I would also be willing to trade so that you could have that experience if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I would take that.
Okay.
Well, then something to think about as committees are working, virtual and different hours and that kind of thing too. What are they going to do going forward? PTA Council, I think, has been extremely accessible since it's been at 5 o'clock in the evening, it's normally at 9:30 in the morning. So I don't know what their plans are, but that's something to consider. Can you get, and then it used to be, in the before time, it used to be at the high school office. So, I'm not privy to the conversations of the PTA Council officers, how much do they value the convenience of 5 o'clock time and everybody, doing it virtually. But that's something to consider, and my sense of you, Trustee Berman, is that you have some amount of flexibility in your schedule, but that's something you should keep in mind.
Thank you.
Are there any other thoughts from trustees? Right now, it sounds like Vice President Blakely, you have been on the Bond Oversight Committee for a long time. Is that something you wish to continue or are interested in handing off?
I enjoy it and I'd like to continue it, but I don't feel super strongly about it. I think just my experience in the district and then passing these various bond measures and paying attention, sometimes it is, as the caller pointed out, just an observer role, but occasionally I can provide a little background or context. I'm certainly not voting on anything. So, but if somebody else really wanted to come, I wouldn't, I wouldn't be devastated.
I just feel that let's just say the board presidency role is a little bit more work than in some of our pre-COVID years. So I want to set you up for success.
Thank you. The Bond Oversight Committee meets 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay.
So it's not a serious time commitment.
Okay. Trustee Wheeler.
I'm going to add some input to that. I think bond oversight is different than almost all the committees where, a lot of these committees, you go and you're an observer and that kind of thing. For bond oversight, I think the value that you provide with your history of the bond elections and the bond work, you as our representative provide a lot of value to that committee. So if you are willing to stay on, I hope that you will.
I am, thank you. And some of the members also, like former trustee Lambert is on that committee. There's other people that have some, longevity with construction, but thanks.
Trustee Chang.
And just as Trustee Blakely has kind of saved me by being back up, I'm happy to be back up for the bond. If there's situations where you can't make one, I can attend that as backup.
Thank you.
All right, so we have mutual alternates. Something that I've been doing this year as board president is attending, so there's PTA council meetings, but the PTA presidents for our own district also have a monthly meeting with Dr. Rudolph, and I've been attending that this year. And I'm also asked to present or speak or give any updates. It's usually a Wednesday before we have a board meeting, and so I often flag for people what's coming up in the board meeting that week. I don't know if, it hasn't been an official appointment, but I don't know if anyone else is interested in doing that. I can continue to do it if nobody else is interested, but I wanted to put that out there as an opportunity as well. All right, I'll continue going for now. Okay. All right, well, it seems like we have some good things to think about and reflect on, and we're well prepared for our next meeting around this item. Thank you, trustees. We will now move on to item 9C, the COVID update, with a presentation from Dr. Rudolph.
So we'll keep this one a little bit more formal, just because we had this sort of last minute. But just wanted to talk just quickly about sort of where we are, and just talk about some upcoming things. So the first one is we have a bunch of mitigation strategies that are still in play. We still spray down all of our classrooms after hours. Everything is still touchless. Obviously, this room wasn't sprayed tonight because Maria would have done it by now, and then she heads out. Our HVAC and our HEPA filters have all been upgraded. So right over there, you can hear the HEPA filter. You can also hear the fans run constantly, so we're always flushing in air in and out. We talked earlier about our exchange rate, which is actually really high thanks to the new system, and that's true across across the whole district in terms of the amount of air that is being flushed in and out. It's a good thing in our weekly call with Santa Clara Department of Public Health, Santa Clara County Department of Public Health, and Santa Clara County Office of Education. One of the things that they were imploring school districts to do was to upgrade their HVAC systems and to add HEPA filters, especially because they were concerned about the rise, the flu season's upon us, and they've already experienced the first case. And so there was a concern that, you'll have the flu plus the pandemic. And so they were just encouraging everybody to do it. We do have testing that does take place throughout the school district. We've been going, in fact, just this week, we had a pool that came back positive. We tested all the kids. We were able to confirm it was just a false positive. So all the kids came back negative that were in the pool, which allowed kids to come back from quarantine because the kids who did not opt into the testing protocol would have had to go into quarantine for 10 days, and they would have had to take tests. So the testing program is working really well. We've, if anything, most of the cases that we're experiencing are breakthrough cases that are occurring because a staff member is getting sick. Do also want to point out that every staff, so even myself, I was tested on Monday. So every staff member is also tested on a weekly basis. All of our staff, our vaccine mandate is in place. So we do not have any staff members attending who are not vaccinated. I believe we have one exemption that is currently taking place. But in terms of unvaccinated staff, we're at 99% with the exception of this one person. We still do have masking both indoors and outdoors. We currently, even though we believe that we have a high number of students who, and especially at middle school, who may be vaccinated, is one of the mitigation strategies that we have to help assure that we're not placing a whole school on lockdown because we have to do contact tracing. And so we know that the place where you're going to be the most likely to be exposed is during lunchtime, which means, and that lunchtime is confined to your actual class. Even though it's outside, like we push the limits for the 15 minutes. And so in this case, having people wear the mask outdoors eliminates the need to do more contact tracing, or what we did last year, which was we limited where kids could go and play to make sure that they couldn't cross. And we really felt like when we weighed the social emotional needs of our students, we felt like allowing them to play with their friends who may not be in their class was actually more important than having them into a set area. So we do keep that in place. I talked just briefly that, we have touches. We still have hand sanitizer throughout the school. Obviously, you can see we have some up here too. And then even in the district office, you'll see hand sanitizing stations. The same is true throughout the school sites. And we're constantly, our custodians are constantly reflushing that. We did make dividers. I know we have dividers right here. But we did make dividers amongst kids. We started to pull those down, but it's actually site optional and teacher optional. And so sites as a group, principals consulted with the teachers to talk about whether or not they wanted to keep the plastic dividers up, which, obviously we're looking through right now, or whether or not they wanted to take them down. Most teachers actually opted to keep the dividers up until kids get vaccinated. So we allowed that to be a site decision. I think where we saw the dividers come down the most is at middle school. We still keep those, and we continue to track data to determine whether or not we need to put them back up. And the reason why we brought them down is because our testing program went up and running, and we kept getting negative testing, and so we felt a little bit more confident that there wasn't community spread. And so this is why we allowed this option to take place. But this does bring a couple of big things just sort of moving forward. The first one is we have started thinking about field trips. We've tentatively planned some for the spring. The problem, though, is that it's going to, when we started thinking about these, we did it with the idea in mind that our kids would be vaccinated. Unfortunately, though, only 277 parents as of yesterday actually have submitted their vaccination records, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And so if you think most students who would have been eligible would be in 7th and 8th, the majority of them, some 6th graders. So we are talking about middle schoolers, but there's over 1,500 middle schoolers who are possibly are already vaccinated, or the majority of them are already vaccinated. But the fact that there's only 297 records that have actually been, or 277 records that have actually been submitted, does create some pause for us. And so there's a couple of programs, field trips, as well as volunteers and masking that are really contingent upon us getting this information to understand what our true vaccination rate is. We have 5 areas within our city that are some of the lowest vaccinated areas within the county. And so it's in these areas attend multiple schools, right? So some attend Graham and Crittenden, and then some attend schools like Vargas, Castro, Mistral, and then I think Montaloma. So it's hard for us to ascertain what the true vaccination rate is when we have these low pockets and we don't have enough documentation. So one of the things I'll be stressing tomorrow in the community check-in is for parents to upload the documentation. They only need to upload the actual final vaccination, not the first shot. But it is a critical component for us to start thinking about bringing volunteers into the classroom, because there are parents who still have fears about having adults into the classroom, whether they're vaccinated or not. It's just the fact that, it is possible to have a breakthrough vaccination. So field trips are tentatively or sort of tentatively scheduled. We do not know whether or not 8th graders are going to be able to go to Yosemite as a whole. We have been working with a group that does it, and we're trying to schedule it. But we also don't know when testing is going to start too. And so that's sort of, we know that if we use our traditional window, but all the stars sort of have to align. But more importantly, for an overnight trip, we want to have the comfort of knowing that staff, teachers, volunteers, students are all vaccinated if they go there. And that was part of the direction and sort of the concern that was brought. So really want to have parents upload this information. You can do it through PowerSchool. We have tutorials online. And then you also can ask our tech department to sort of guide you through the process. Or if you really need assistance, our school sites can also help you too. But we want to make sure that we get this information in so that we can start making some decisions. We have a volunteer process in place. Again, we're holding back on volunteers until we understand only 277 families who have actually submitted the information. It's kind of hard to understand whether or not where all of our kids are. We do want to get to a higher number. Whether or not we can get close to herd immunity would be great, but we just want to lower the possible mitigations for this. So what we do know is for 5 to 11, which is the majority of our students, as of yesterday, only 20.4%, or about 33 vaccinations have actually been administered throughout the county. And so the county has not broken this data out yet. If you look on their charts, so they have, I think they have 12 through adults on their map, so you can see where that is, but they do not have the 5 to 11 up just yet. And part of that's probably because they just started this program, and so there's this big push. But again, we want to make sure we're 20.4%. It's still a very low number, and you're talking about across the whole county, which is a couple million people. So we do want to make sure that we get that in. We will be able to at least start the background information for volunteers, meaning we will be able to, so we want to make sure that we do the TB testing. We want to get a volunteer's vaccination record, and we do need to do the security check. So when you come in, every time you scan your ID, It does a background check to just make sure you're not a sex offender or if there's not a warrant or something for your arrest. That's one of the safety mitigation factors, steps that we put in. So we want to go ahead and sort of speed that process up. And the way we speed that process up is that we can start having parents at least submit their information. So when we start allowing volunteers to come in, our goal is to issue a card that allows families to come in, or a parent or volunteer to come in, swipe, make sure, get authenticated by the front office staff, and then walk back out, as opposed to what our current process is, which is you walk in, you sign in, you submit, you put your ID in, and then you wait for the printout of the actual badge, right? So we're just trying to speed up this process to reduce the number of people who are actually in the front office at any given time. But we can start rolling that process out so that parents, if you need to get a TB test, which lasts for 4 years, or if you need to, do fingerprinting or something like that, we can get those things done now ahead of time. So we're trying to be a little bit smarter about the use of time. So that's really about it for where we are in terms of COVID. Feel good in terms of the direction that we're heading in. What we are sort of monitoring right now is last year, if you look at the data, you will see a similar spike, but this year that spike actually was a little bit larger than what it was last year. And that's even with vaccinations being out, right? So if you compare sort of the sort of big Delta variant wave that came and sort of dies down it's like a 4 or 5 week period. And then you compare it to this year, you'll see a higher spike. And then what you see is that dip. And then right around this time is when we saw the biggest increase. And so we're a little concerned that we'll see a similar increase. But what we're hearing from the county Department of Public Health, as well as from the CDC, is that this if we see a spike like this again, it most likely will be an issue of those who are unvaccinated, as opposed to those who aren't vaccinated. So obviously, we continue to push, please, please, please get vaccinated, get vaccinated, get vaccinated. And so that's sort of where we are with COVID, but more than willing to answer any additional questions. I know we've talked about this in pieces, but just wanted to give you an update and sort of tell you what things we've been doing and sort of where we are with certain things.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. Trustee Wheeler, question?
I know you're going to do your superintendent check-in tomorrow, and I hope that, the question we get from parents all the time is, when can parents come back in the classroom and on campus? And I think the explanation you gave tonight of, the ball's in your court now, of, get your children vaccinated, get you vaccinated, that will allow us to, have your kids go on field trips, have the parents who want to come on campus help out with the teachers, help out with their committees and PTAs, giving that announcement, frequently and clearly, I think will be really helpful.
Thank you. And upload the information into Power School so we have it. I think that's probably the piece that we haven't stressed enough, right? It's upload the information.
Trustee Cheng?
I just one question about educating communities, especially communities with low vaccination or lower vaccination rates on the effectiveness and answering questions about the vaccines. Have we done any kind of whether through our nurses or coordinating to have doctors kind of speak after school to certain parent pocket communities about the vaccine? Have we done any kind of educating separate from vaccine drives?
We've done some communication about the importance of it. And then obviously a lot more of it has been spent on the individual level. When we find out that there's someone who is very hesitant or they have some questions, we try our best to answer. We're fortunate in our district. We also have an epidemiologist who works at Stanford, who has a child in our school. And then obviously, I've talked to a couple other Stanford pediatricians about this issue. So we have provided time and information to individuals, and we do try to point them to where they can get their questions answered. And then obviously, in certain areas, we try to concentrate a little bit more information for them and put it in different areas. So, and I think our partnerships. So one of the benefits of COVID has been that the county now realizes, like, and I guess it's sort of an ode to, for those who got a polio vaccination, you would have got it in school. And so it's sort of this ode to this old process of just bring the stuff out. And so, like, doing things like having our Tdap shots at the schools. We've had mobile flu clinics for staff members come out, like doing those types of things and bringing them. We've had vaccination clinics during the summer. We'll have one coming up, has also helped, but also having the doctors there to answer questions. And so hopefully the one on December 1st, we can do a captive audience because we also have the food bank that's normally there. And so we have people who are coming for dual purposes. So I think there's been a stronger outreach to engage a lot more organizations, faith-based, service-oriented nonprofits to communicate this information out.
And I'm going to piggyback on you, Trustee Chang. I think that part of it is that we're going to find out based on those vaccination card uploads where we do have pockets or where there is hesitancy. So I think we will reach the point where we know where we might need to be providing more hands-on kind of information nights or something like that, but we're not quite there yet because it's that first wave. Trustee Berman?
So I have a question about the volunteer cards or passes that will be extended out to parents. So will every level of volunteer be required to have one of those cards? So whether you read for Project Cornerstone or you're coming to help, set something up, and so you just sort of drop by from time to time, will it be sort of all levels of volunteers will be required to have those cards?
Yes.
And what sort of information do parents need to provide in order to get, to be cleared? Is it just a fingerprint? Do they need a driver's license? I'm just wondering if there's going to be any barriers for any of our parents to get one of these cards.
This is actually just mandated, right? So you have to take a TB test. You have to do a background check. And then in this case, you'll provide your vaccination status too. Ms. Victor, I don't know if there's anything else that I'm missing outside of those that a parent would need to go through with the system. Or if somebody wants to phone a friend and help her out, that's perfectly fine.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. I apologize. No, I think those were the big pieces with our checks.
And fingerprinting. Sorry, I forgot about that one. So fingerprinting, background check, COVID vaccination, and TB testing.
So the TB test, parents will have to go out on their own through their doctors, get the TB test. Fingerprinting will be done at the school site?
You can do that at the district office.
At the district office.
Yeah, and TB test, your TB test is good every 4 years. And like even I just did a TB test. So all of us, everybody that interacts with kids has to undergo that.
All right, so I just had one quick question. This is a scenario that I saw come up in a parent group. In a situation where, let's say, there's a child who's already fully vaccinated. They have opted into the testing on campus. So on Tuesday, they got tested. And on Thursday, that child starts to develop symptoms. They are, under our guidelines, they are required to go get a PCR test before they can return to campus. That's correct?
You're testing my limits. I want to say so this is where it gets a little bit different for a kid that is vaccinated versus a kid that isn't vaccinated. So a kid, and Tara, you're more than welcome. I see you're
Oh, hi.
Uh,
Little doggy.
So if I'm correct, you just have to be 24 hours symptom free. You do not need to go get a test. Is that correct?
If you have symptoms, if you have fever, if you have multiple symptoms, I'm so sorry for my dog.
It's okay.
But
It's okay.
if you have symptoms, it would be best to go and get a test. If you had just been tested the day before, it would be unlikely that you would, develop COVID overnight. But if you have developed symptoms, we would always want you to go and get tested.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Vicure.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're fine. Your dog is telling you it's time to get off the screen and go to bed. We will quickly take public comment on this item. If you're a member of the public and you would like to comment, you may raise your hand in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Seeing as there's no comment at this time, trustees, Trustee Chang, we have 6 minutes left, just to point
I'll
out.
make this brief, but I would strongly encourage our board to consider making updating parents reporting their vaccination records a requirement. It's actually rather unintrusive on the scale of requirements that parents are asked to do in this COVID crisis. Asking parents to report whether their child has been vaccinated to Power School is a very low threshold, and so many of our decisions on the student experience is pivoting on that. The fact that there's 277 uploaded out of 1,500 possibly vaccinated. In my environment, as an educator, I can't tell you how relieved it is that I know 99% of my students are vaccinated, and that's I've been taking my kids on field trips, and it changes everything. And there very well may be already pockets of environments where in Mount Wisconsin that have a super high vaccination rate in the 7th and 8th grade, yet we're operating in this environment of not knowing. And I think that as we're learning now the power of mandates, as we have mandated our faculty to get vaccinated, on that scale of mandating somebody just to say, I have a form or I don't, and like the parents who have not vaccinated to be asked to occasionally report back, has your child been vaccinated or not? It's not trying to accelerate the state mandate on the vaccination. It's simply saying, have you turned in your Power School form? I think is a really light thing, and I urge our board to mandate that.
Thank you, Trustee Chang. One thing that came up in the Mountain View President's meeting, the PTA President's meeting for the district, was this idea of, well, what if my child's class is fully vaccinated, but the same grade level at another school site isn't, or maybe not all the classes at my school site. Can my child's class go ahead and have volunteers and go on field trips? And I want us to be careful that we don't end up creating a gap or haves and have-nots around vaccination access that has educational impacts. So I just want us to keep that in mind as we move forward. I'm not really sure how it's going to play out, but I wanted to put that out there. We will now move on to item 10, board updates. Are there any board updates, or will we email those in? Trustee Chang?
I'll make this brief, but I would want to, as a board update, just recognize that this is formally the last meeting that President Connolly will be leading the whole thing of. And there is no test of leadership more than a crisis. And you have led us through this pandemic, and you have led us in ways that are just like heroic and professional, and just like, I imagine I can safely express gratitude on all of us for leading us through this. And I just can't say enough what that means to imagine the whole board.
Thank you, Trustee Chang.
What he said.
Thank you. I think this is a team project here. And I sincerely appreciate the leadership of Dr. Rudolph. You got a new board president in the middle of a pandemic, and you kind of had to train me up. And so I appreciate everyone's patience and support. And all of the phone calls that I make to him and text messages. We will now move on to item 11, items for future agendas. Are there any items for future agendas, Dr. Rudolph?
No.
All right. Our future board meeting dates will be December 9th, January 6th, January 20th, and February 10th.
And just real quick, we do have the two special dates set. So we will do a marathon of meetings when we come back in January. So we will go January 6th is our regular scheduled board meeting. January 8th will be our study session. And then January 13th will be our, the board's anti-bias training session.
All right, thank you.
Yes, so January 8th will be from 9 to 2. We will provide food. And then January 13th, I think is the day I said, it is from 5 to 8.
All right, thank you.
We can always adjust the 5 to 8 if we need to move it back a little bit later.
I want to thank trustees for stepping up to do that extra work, especially the anti-bias training. That was something I was hoping we could squeeze in this year, but I'm glad that we have it on our calendar as a team. And on that note, at 9:59 p.m., this meeting of the non-dualism.
Community comment.
Oh dear, I have a community comment. No, it's okay. We'll take a community comment on the, I'm assuming either future agenda items or board meeting dates. You will have about 30 seconds. We'll get a timer up. The 30 seconds is purely because we're about to have to close out the meeting.
Pressure.
All right, Mr. Nelson, you may unmute yourself. You have 30 seconds on the timer.
Yes. You didn't have anything earlier for community comment for future board agenda items. I want to say one of the things you haven't put on is the issue of the largest challenge for California schools, which is segregation related to housing in neighborhoods. And also, you still have that hanging thing in there of segregation having to do with the magnet schools. I'll be sending my rest of my comment to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. At 10 p.m., this meeting of the Mountain